Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the meeting of the Lowell School Committee to order. Let's begin by honoring America and salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Ms. Larraba.
Here.
Mr. Leahy.
Here.
Mr. Leary.
Here.
Ms. Martin.
Here.
Mayor Milanazzo.
Here.
Mr. Conway.
Here.
Ms. Doherty.
Here.
7 present.
Good evening. To begin the agenda, special order of business. We don't have any special order of business, I don't believe, this evening, so we'll move on to the minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes. The first is a special meeting of January 20th, 2010. Motion by Mr. Leahy, seconded by Ms. Doherty, to approve the minutes as presented. Any discussion, corrections, deletions? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed? It's a vote. Regular meeting of January 20th. Motion by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Leary, to approve the minutes as presented. Any discussion on the minutes as presented? Hearing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed? It's a vote. Thank you. We don't have any permission to enter this evening. We do have 6 memorials, if my colleagues would allow me to read them. The first one, Dorothea Sapasaris, retired public school teacher and wife of George Sapasaris, former superintendent of schools. John C. Simon Senior, member of a prominent Lowell family. Michael S. Feeney, brother-in-law of Carolyn Rochelot, coordinator of special programs and extended time. John Tye Jr., father-in-law of Jennifer Tye, adult education teacher. James Silk, father of Susan Silk, Lowell High School teacher, and grandfather of Melissa McDonald, adult education teacher. Irene Simino, teacher at Keith Hall and Lowell Catholic, and sister-in-law of Sandy Simano, grant management account clerk. Could we please rise at a moment of silence and darken chambers? Thank you. May they rest in peace.
Thank you, honey. I couldn't get them on. Thank you.
Do we have any unfinished business this evening? Moving right into public participation, we have Michael Sheehan, 97 Forest Street, to speak on the report listed under new business on-call emergency responder stipend.
Michael Sheehan. Would it be possible to speak, Mayor Milanazzo, when that portion comes up on new business?
It's up to
I
my
believe,
colleagues.
It's
You could
Okay.
bring the report on the floor now if you
We
want.
can, okay, motion by Ms. Martin, second by Mr. Leary, to move the report to this part of the agenda. All those in favor of suspending the rules and moving the report signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. We'll move the report forward. Let me actually just go to that.
Yeah, I'd just like to, do you want me to speak first, obviously, before you, okay.
Okay, Madam Superintendent, we do have a report in our packet from Jay Lang, Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations, to Dr. Scott regarding the on-call emergency responder stipend. And again, it goes over the information relative to a request that the committee had at our last meeting when this was actually brought forward, looking for information as to the number of alarm responses and so forth. And that information is there. So, Madam Superintendent?
Yes, the report details the fact that we made many cuts in the area of custodians, and one of the significant cuts that we made last year was the night person who basically looked after schools during the evening hours. And as the winter wears on, the person who does the day shift presently, and I can ask Assistant Superintendent Lang to expand on this, but basically he's on call, and I'll give you one example. Over the weekend, although he's done a full week of work, over the last 5 days, he's had 11 calls through the evening, through the night, and he can be up all night and then come to work at 8 o'clock in the morning again. So Assistant Superintendent Lang and I have been concerned about the fact that this is occurring, and just for his well-being. And a suggestion that's been put forward to the committee to consider is having a stipend position where very senior custodians throughout the system could be on call to receive these night calls. So for example, in the winter when a pipe might burst because of, cold temperatures or what have you, which has been the case in the past week. Assistant Superintendent Lang, do you have anything to add to that?
Sorry, happy to answer any questions, but
Any questions? Ms. Larraba?
Would this be a rotating on-call?
yeah, the position, if you don't mind.
Yes.
The position itself would be posted. We would have to see what type of applicants we ended up getting for it. It's really all going to depend on how many people are interested in doing the position. It could be something if, one or two people were, it could be every other couple week rotating type thing. It's really all going to depend on the candidates that come forward that are interested. To give you a little flavor, Mr. Curley, the Director of Operations and Maintenance, and Mr. Gore, who used to be the Supervisor of Custodians in the evening, would split off this duty, and then myself and Mr. Cassidy would cover in an emergency like a break or things of that sort. But with Mr. Gore going back to being a custodian, the full-time duty has fallen to Mr. Curley, and then myself and Mr. Cassidy. And it really is a task that just, it happens so often, particularly during the heating season. You'll get a heating coil that'll break in a school or whatnot, and you really have to respond after hours. But you're not getting the quality of work you want the next day because you're dragging from being up the night before. So we did talk about this in subcommittee, and I said I'd bring some information forward on just the number of calls, the type of calls. A lot do stem from building emergencies like a heating coil that would break, could have burglaries in the schools, and quite honest, oftentimes it's nuisance calls where particularly in the heating season, if the heat happens to kick on in a particular classroom and we have the univents near the windows, if they blow the shades, it could set off a motion detector in the classroom. But you still have to respond because you don't know if it's just a false alarm or if it's an actual emergency at the school or some type of a pipe break that you wouldn't want to let go until the following morning. So we put together the rationale with the backup and a proposed job description. The job description is a little vague. It certainly would be a school department employee fulfilling these duties, but we really don't know who until we saw which candidates were interested in coming forward. And then we would work. It's a non-affiliated position. The position itself, Mr. Curley's, is not in a union, so his duties are not covered under a contract. So there's some flexibility in who would actually apply for the position to figure out rotation, schedule, things of that sort.
Ms. Larraba?
And is this throughout the summertime, or is this just during the school year?
No, it would be year-round.
Before Mr. Sheehan speaks, could I have a motion to actually bring the new business item, permission to post on-call emergency responder stipend, to the floor by Ms. Larraba, second by Ms. Doherty? Mr. Leary.
Just so I can understand what you're saying, so you're saying this position would be essentially 26 weeks out of the year? Is that what you're looking at? As opposed to 52, because you're going to split off with Mr. Curley? Is that what you're saying?
No, I would envision this position being year-round.
Okay.
It just depending if, let's say, two people came forward that were interested, instead of having one person doing it, every week, they could do a week on, week off, and they could rotate with someone else. But the amount of calls come in regularly, in the evenings and weekends, year-round. And even if it was off-cycle from the school, Mr. Curley's regular job during the day would still, you'd take away from that if he were up the night before handling other school calls. So I envision it being an annual stipend, so it would happen year-round. It's just a question about who actually is interested and willing and applies to figure out what type of a rotation would happen.
But the value would be like 10,400 basically, is that the total?
Yeah, 10-4, pretty much annually.
Thank you. Mr. Sheehan, you have the floor. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Mayor Malinazzo. My question, or the reason obviously I'm here to speak is that I heard the superintendent mention that, possibly a custodian would do it. And the requirements that Mr. Lang had just generally, it's just kind of a vague thing. It just mentions you know, individuals selected have knowledge of building mechanical rooms, boiler rooms, electrical rooms, alarm systems to be able to properly investigate building issues. My concern is that, you know, any individual that's probably going to put in for this job and that you're ultimately going to want to select is probably going to be a custodian. My issue from a union standpoint, that's something that has to be negotiated. And, you know, I would strongly urge that if you do decide to put this for some sort of stipend, that you first come to us and negotiate it. We've had, you know, some off-the-record conversations with Mr. Lang, because he had brought it up about a month ago. They do offer on-calls over in the city, and, you know, they do have something like this. You know, it's a stipend. They also get, each call, they get a 2-hour overtime. To be honest, I think the money that you're putting out for the stipend, to be quite honest, I don't see how anybody would go for that. I mean, I looked at it as you'd basically be on call for 84 hours a week, you know, for $200 a week. That's about $2.38 an hour after taxes, you know. So, I mean, I understand that, you know, there needs to be somebody to, you know, obviously help out Mr. Curley and assist. I just feel that, you know, this is something that has to be negotiated with the union. I know it is a little vague. You don't specifically say what employees you're looking for, but it's, you know, it's kind of in black and white who you're going to hire for it. So, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Sheehan. Any further discussion? Ms. Martin?
Thank you
Mr. Leahy?
very much. Just to be clear, so we would then, based on what Mr. Sheehan's just mentioned, we'd have the opportunity perhaps to glean from city employees?
My intention originally when creating this posting was just to be a school department employee, a current employee. Again, because Mr. Curley's position is not part of a collective bargaining agreement, his duties aren't restricted to any particular bargaining unit. So really, it would be open to any employee of the Lowell Public Schools, as worded, to apply for this. Could be custodians, could be other employees. We would have to see who came forward and figure out if it was the right fit.
But would we be able to open it up to, like, DPW employees who would probably have similar experience with school buildings? I mean, if Mr. Sheehan's correct and there's no custodian who's looking to augment their salary at this point,
Yeah, what I would recommend.
if that's the case,
Right.
that's their purview.
Right.
But I would think that we would have experienced custodians on the city side who would be able to avail themselves of this opportunity for themselves and their families.
Right. I would recommend bringing it forward, posting it under this first, to see what we had for contenders. If no one was interested in the position, then I could bring it back with a revised recommendation, and we could open up the pool to a much larger audience. Yeah, it could be other city workers from other departments who might be interested in this type of a stipend.
My only concern is that that would have the potential to waste some time, but I can understand, I mean, understandably, the best case scenario would be having a school department employee performing these tasks, but if there's not going to be the interest there,
I would just
we'd
recommend,
be
again,
wasting some time.
I'm certainly cognizant of the wasting of the time, because I'm going out on some of these calls
Yeah,
as well.
exactly.
But where this isn't a kind of a contract position, we can do it, and it's not a full-time position, we can do a 10-day posting. So if within 10 days we didn't get applicants, this wouldn't delay the process for a number of months. I could bring it right back. We could revise the posting at the next school committee meeting to just expand the eligible pool, if the committee so desired.
With a 10-day posting, that makes perfect sense.
Correct.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leahy?
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Lang. I'm all in favor of posting this, but you know what, I'd be curious to see what the difference was with the person that when we got rid of the position custodian supervisor. I'd like to know what the difference is between his salary now and what he was getting paid. And because we're gonna be spending potentially about $11,000. So, if we don't get any applicants for this, not to delay it, but I'm imagining it's probably not much more. It might be worth just to bring that position back because, we need someone at night to supervise. we really could use someone to supervise at night, especially to go around to the schools, the high school. I had a motion in months ago about surplus in the schools. I mean, we really need to get on that, and we need to get rid of all this excess, whatever you want to call it, that's in our schools. We've got copy machines and supplies and cleaning supplies and everything that we need to take care of. So, not to delay the process now if we want to go ahead and post this, but
Right.
unless you think we could have a facilities meeting, come Monday or Tuesday and answer these questions and bring it up, or,
I would recommend that if the committee so desires, we move forward with this 10-day posting, to at least see who's out there for an audience who might be interested in the position. If we don't have any takers, we have a couple of opportunities. I can come back with a recommendation to expand the pool. I can, at the same time, even if you took the current salary of a senior custodian and added this 10, you're probably still another, off the top of my head, between 5,000 and 10,000 away from that supervisor's position. But I could bring that back with a full report on what the pay would be at that time.
I mean,
Obviously,
it'd almost be easier to do that then, if we're that close.
right, we would have to be,
Why,
right, but I would have to bring a recommendation to you to eliminate another position, because you'd need to eliminate a custodial position to then reinstate the supervisor of custodian position. So I'd have to see through the organization where we could take that cut to then recommend the other position be reinstated with the differential.
okay.
Ms. Martin?
I was just going to comment that, I mean, if we were, because if I'm understanding Mr. Leahy's proposal, you'd be saying bringing back that evening custodian position, the evening supervisor position, but we'd still need to have a custodian. I mean, we'd be creating a new position, which wouldn't be a $5,000 difference. I mean, that would have to be close to a $35,000, $40,000 difference, and that's not even taking into account benefits, which would add another 10 to 12.
And that's why I was thinking, we would have to eliminate another position. We'd have to find a position to eliminate to fund that position.
Which would mean eliminating one of the custodians of the three-men teams, which we now have basically throughout. You'd be bringing one team down to two.
Well, at the elementary level, the middle level currently has 4,
Okay.
and the high school has more. But that's why I need more time to really look at the existing structure to bring back a recommendation of, if that were to be considered, what level that would come from.
Ms. Doherty, then Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just through you to Mr. Lang. If I understand this correctly, we're not locked into anything by putting the posting out there and seeing what interest that generates, right? So
That's correct.
what we'd be doing is just gathering some information in terms of if there are employees out there who would be interested. At the same time, you could be looking at some other options in terms of filling this need. We're not locked into hiring someone just because we post it, right?
Correct. Under this particular posting, that's correct.
Okay. Well, I mean, to me, that seems like a, pretty good initiative to just go forward with it and get more information. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Superintendent?
I'd just like to follow up on Committee Member Martin's point, because it is, from my perspective, the point. It's not just the differential, but it's a whole entire other salary. And originally, when we looked at the need that we had, we did want to fill it with a full-time person. We made that cut. It was a significant cut for us, but in the whole picture of all the needs we have across the system in our classrooms, we just couldn't justify bringing that proposal forward to you, and that's when Mr. Lang came up with the suggestion of a stipend. Literally, I am concerned about our people, Mr. Lang and others, who get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and go check pipes that are breaking, and then come to work at, very early in the morning and put in another full day for us. And this has been going on for months. So that's why it's a stipend and not a full-time position. That's the whole context of the discussion.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion on the floor? Hearing none. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Leahy.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to add one more thing, just for discussion here too, that I did mention to Mr. Lang, and we are working on trying to cut down the calls, right? So we had that discussion. Any calls that are alarms are being tripped by motion detectors, we should take a look at that, and if we can move them in a different position or stop whatever's setting them off, I mean, that might cut down about a third of these calls too, so, thank you.
Any
No
further
one wants to
discussion?
go out less than me.
Okay, roll call, please, on the motion.
This is permission to
Post,
permission to
correct.
post. Miss Larrabee,
Yes?
Mr. Leahy,
Yes.
Mr. Leary,
Yes.
Miss Martin,
Yes.
Mayor Melanazzo,
Yes.
Mr. Conway,
Yes.
Miss Doherty,
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Thank you. The chair would like to recognize Mr. Leary while we're under suspension of the rules and under public participation. If I could recognize Mr. Leary.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to have a motion to suspend the rules in order to bring the home education portion of the reports on the superintendent under this part of the meeting and allow, I guess the home education parent is Elizabeth Baldwin, who wishes to speak regarding that petition. So I need a
Motion's
second.
been made by Mr. Leary, seconded by Ms. Doherty, to take this item up under suspension while we're actually still under suspension. All those in favor of taking this item up now, signify by saying aye. Opposed, to vote. Elizabeth Baldwin. We have a request for home education. The following parent guardian seeks permission to home educate her child, Elizabeth Baldwin, 45 By Street. Under General Laws, Chapter 76, Section 1, home education is constitutionally permissible. Therefore, I recommend approval of this request. If granted, the number of families approved by the Lowell School Committee to homeschool will total 31, and the total number of children will be 59. I just wanted to read that into the minutes. Thank
Good
you.
evening, everyone.
Ms. Baldwin.
I didn't want to be here tonight. I have gone through many of you can attest to this, I've gone through every route I could think of to keep my child in the public school system. That's where I want her. And to be here and have to educate her myself means that I have to go home and I have to turn down a job tomorrow. That's hard. To say as a public school system that we cannot fully educate any one child it's unbelievable to me. And it's all because of a policy that we have in place for kindergartners and first graders only, that their age is more important than their knowledge. My daughter is in a kindergarten classroom learning her alphabet. They have made special accommodations as of December to make sure that she was placed in a first grade classroom for reading only, so that she would not be as far behind. She's reading chapter books and learning the alphabet. They're not teaching her any math. She already knows how to subtract and add. And it is frustrating as a parent to watch your child sit and through an entire day of school and not learn. I would really like everyone to think about this when we go into, it's not just a curriculum issue. Our teachers are there to teach the kids, and they want to teach them. Can you imagine being a teacher and sitting there watching a child who you can't reach because that's not what your curriculum is set up to do? She's learned those things 2 full years ago, and that's where we have her. And she can't be the only one in that kind of situation. The teacher can't do anything. The superintendent of schools can't do anything. They're all up against this policy. There are no exceptions to it. So they've worked out, I can homeschool her half a day and have mathematics and extracurricular in the afternoon through the public schools. And that will satisfy some kind of loophole that will allow her into 2nd grade next year, so that she's not repeating. When they made this exception to allow her to do the reading, she would have to repeat it again next year as a 1st grade student. And I'm trying to avoid her repeating. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense financially. It doesn't make sense for the student academically. And I would really strongly like you guys to think about this as you go forward and examine policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Baldwin. We need a motion to approve the request for home education. Mr. Leary?
Make a motion to
Second-
approve them. Yeah.
Second by Ms. Martin. Motion's on the floor. Any further discussion? Ms. Martin?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I do want to thank you, Ms. Baldwin, for coming to speak to us. I know that I've been involved in some of the meetings that we've had trying to find an answer for you, and I regret that we haven't found anything that has worked for your family. I apologize for that. I do think that we've, in making the accommodations that we've had, we've really tried within the bounds that that we're all faced with to find a good solution. I hope that as you complete this year and your daughter comes back for returns in second grade, that it will be a smooth transition, and certainly I can say from the school department side of things, we'll do all we can. But you have been a tireless advocate for your child, which is what you're supposed to be. And your daughters are both very lucky for that. And that again, having not been able to satisfy your concerns, I'm sorry for that. And I hope that as we move forward, we'll be able to welcome your daughter back. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Doherty?
I thank Your Honor. I have to say, I feel a personal sense of failure about this whole issue. I think I got an email or a letter, maybe it was, back in March of last year with Ms. Baldwin's concerns about her daughter's ability to come in and be challenged in our classrooms. And I know that our staff has worked to try to make these accommodations, but other than being able to come up with an exception to the policy, which is really where we're back at, we were not able to come up with a set of testing criteria or some other means to say there is a way to get around this policy, because we're dealing with human beings, with children who come with different skill sets. And I'm sorry that we weren't able to do that. The last meeting that I recall having was in the fall. I'm thinking like October, where at that meeting, Mrs. Baldwin expressed her frustrations with her daughter not being challenged in class. And we talked, the administration talked about specific accommodations that would be made to try to address that. And then, really, I don't remember any more being said or done in terms of, I believe at that meeting we talked about looking at what other districts do when they have age. You have to have an age policy. You have to say, if you don't turn such and such an age by September 1st or whatever the date is, you have to draw a line. I understand that. I think we all understood that. But there also should be some mechanism for providing exceptions to that. And again, I just want to say I feel personally responsible for not pushing this issue further. And although I certainly welcome your daughter back into the school system whenever that's appropriate for your family, I also think it behooves us to look at this issue again and see if we can't come up with some system that is fair to everybody, that doesn't put undue stress on our staff, but also recognizes that we're dealing with human beings, and that even the rule, a line in the sand, has to have some flexibility to it. And I just want to apologize for my inability to help move that forward in time for this child. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Doherty. Mr. Leary?
Just quickly, and I just want to echo what my colleague, Ms. Martin and Ms. Doherty have articulated, and then to Ms. Baldwin, again, I apologize as well. I know you've actually become good friends on the telephone and emails lately, and I don't regret that, actually. It's been very, trying to solve this issue is very complex. I do notice that when we go to the quarterly motions, that this motion states that it's been completed, and we need to follow up with some of the recommendations that Ms. Doherty just mentioned. I don't need to belabor the point, but we need to address what those concerns were. We may not change the policy, but we need to go through exactly what, we're talking about test measurements and other evidence, what other school systems do, and really have a vote for the committee if we make exceptions for children that come in from parochial schools who've already repeated a grade. I think that's essentially what we're beginning to talk about here, is if someone just took kindergarten at whatever particular school and they've passed it substantially well, and then emotionally there's a measurement to say that they can handle first grade. We got to look at that to see if that's allowable. It's very complex. It's very easy for me to sit here and say that simplistically, but there's much more to it. But again, as Ms. Martin said, I think the goal is to hopefully bring your child back into the system, and we'll go forward from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leary. Any further discussion We have a motion on the floor that's been seconded. Roll call.
Ms. Larrabee,
Yes?
Mr. Leahy,
Yes.
Mr. Leary,
Yes.
Ms. Martin,
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo,
Yes.
Mr. Conway,
Yes.
Ms. Doherty.
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Thank you. I'd like to now move back to the regular agenda. We're at the motion portion of the agenda. First motion by Ms. Martin, requesting an update from the administration on our efforts to expand and market our Teacher Academy program to local and regional district as a fee-for-service program. Seconded by Ms. Doherty. Ms. Martin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Really just looking for some updated information. Over the course of the summer, I believe it was, we had this initial conversation, really talking about taking our professional development efforts, which are exceptionally well-received and are of a very high quality, and really along the same lines as our police academy here in the city, trying to give access to our neighbors, our neighboring districts, so that they don't need to recreate these services, and they're able to basically just purchase as a value added here from our teacher academy. We did talk about it quite a while ago. I'm just hoping, and I don't know if the superintendent can do it now or she'd prefer to report out another time, if we could get an update as to how many spots have been sold, what the income has looked like, how that's compared and contrasted with the amount we've invested in it, just so we can kind of get a sense of the success of that program at this point.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion? Mr. Leahy.
Sure, just very quickly, through you to the maker of the motion, did we already have this motion on? No?
I don't think so.
Oh, all right, I thought we did, because you had brought it up for discussion, maybe?
We had discussed it when we first initiated creating this option, but that
Oh, all right,
was,
But then we never actually,
well, I'm trying to find out if
Okay.
it was implemented, and I'm just trying to find out if anyone
Okay.
bought.
Chair would like to recognize Superintendent.
Thank you, Ms. Martin, for the motion. As an update, I believe it was approximately 3 school committee meetings ago that we had the school committee vote the account so that we could receive actually these monies. And I would like to present a full report to you on exactly the progress to date. During these very difficult financial times, I know conversations have occurred with various institutions. But right now, as it looks, and was the original thought as well, that our licensure program would have some takers. And so I believe that was the rush to get the account open so that we could start saying yes to those people. But I would like to be able to present a full report.
Thank you.
We can look forward to that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, it's a vote. Next motion by Ms. Martin requests that the athletic subcommittee work with the athletic department at Lowell High School to host an informational evening for the parents of student athletes to assist them in preparing their children for college recruiting opportunities. Seconded by Mr. Conway. Ms. Martin.
Thank you very much. This motion really comes by way of a conversation that I had with a parent who had expressed interest in this. I think that, we have a wide range of sporting and athletic opportunities available to our students at Lowell High School, and I think that we have a kind of varying degree of expertise in terms of, our coaches are working with students, all day, every day, but some have more familiarity in working with college-level coaches in kind of giving students the kind of the foundation points that they need to know if they really are in kind of trying to position themselves for athletic scholarships as they move forward in their educational careers. And again, this is something that is far afield from my experience, so I offer no expertise whatsoever in this area. But my understanding is that there are some, whether it's knowing how to make the appropriate tapes, whether it's knowing which kind of schools have particular expertise or interest, that we would have the opportunity perhaps to have, again, working through the athletic subcommittee, an opportunity to have some experts come in and be able to speak to a group of, parents who would be interested to help them help their coaches so that really the parents know what they can be doing to be a little proactive. I just think it's one more way that our student athletes can take advantage of that talent and hopefully translate it into a lifelong education. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Conway, then Ms. Doherty.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to congratulate Ms. Martin on this motion, because I think it's extremely important, because sports can give an opportunity for a student to move on into the college level. And I think to inform the parents exactly the process and the procedure, I think is extremely important, because it can get complicated. And I think that as parents, that, you know, we all think that our sons and our daughters are going to get scholarships, and sadly to say, it's a very, very rare situation where somebody will be actually getting a scholarship, because as we know, scholarships go out to Division I schools. However, I think what's very important too to keep in mind is not necessarily always just a scholarship, but if somebody has a specific talent, perhaps not at that level of a Division I, but yet a Division III school can certainly, it can help that individual get into a better college. So I think that this motion, I'm actually very excited about working on that in the subcommittee. And again, I thank you for that motion, Ms. Martin.
Thank you. Ms. Doherty.
Quickly, I just want to add two things. I think the timing is perfect, because first of all, we know we have very talented athletes across the spectrum of sports that we offer at Lowell High School. And secondly, with the cuts that were made last year, we lost our 2 college and career guidance counselors at the high school, and I think that's been a gap that we're still trying to fill in terms of expertise at the high school. So I think it's a good time, and I think we can really make some positive moves with this, so I think it was a good idea. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, vote. Thank you. Next motion by Mr. Conway to request the city manager to address the feasibility of placing intermittent crosswalks and appropriate signs and other devices to ensure a safe crossing of Andover Street for students going to and from the Sullivan and Riley schools. Seconded by Mr. Leahy. Mr. Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very briefly on this, I observe on a daily basis, and I cringe when I see students coming out of the Sullivan School in particular, because they're a little bit older, obviously, than the Riley School, and running across Andover Street. And I think that we all know that that it obviously is a real problem. You take a look at the traffic, and that street has been a problem for traffic for for a number of years, ever since I can remember. What I did do is I did a little bit of research on this area, and I found out that there was a motion that was brought up in 2003 by Eileen Donahue, and I called her and I sat down with her and we discussed this in great detail, and she thought it was a great idea to go forward with this motion to look at the feasibility of trying to make that street a little bit safer, keeping in mind the proximity of those 2 schools to Andover Street. I then went to Lieutenant Crowley, Tim Crowley, who is apparently in charge of the traffic area. We sat down, we talked about it in great detail. I explained to him what I felt was a real problem. He agreed, and he also agreed that he would certainly support this, and that he would be very willing, if it was all right through the city manager and through the chief, that there should be a study done there to take a look at it and see what can be done to make that street a little bit safer and perhaps slow those cars down for the students at the Riley and the Sullivan School. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. Mr. Leahy.
Thank you. I like these motions, so I called Dave and congratulated him. I think honestly that, we have to make this a priority. I know last night I came down to the city council meeting, and, I know money's tight on all sides, but I think we're either going to do it or we're not going to do it. We talk about this for years now. I've had a motion on to try to put a crosswalk on Boylston Street so the kids can cross from one sidewalk into the neighborhoods. We have a crosswalk there now, but it goes from the curb to the dirt embankment. And, I don't know how hard it is, but last year when we had crews up on Lawrence Street, I don't know how hard it would have been to have them come up and do a cutout on Boylston Street. But I think we really just need to buckle down and say, look, are we going to do it or not? And, you know, it's going to benefit everybody, the schools, the people who walk in the neighborhood. And I hope really that this goes somewhere. When we look at the savings we get at the end of the year, there's always a little bit of money. And I think we just need to really just make it a priority. There's probably a handful of spots throughout the city that people have asked for something like this. I know there's complications. You can't just put down a crosswalk. You need the cutouts. So maybe, you know, we can get somewhere. We can come up with some good answers, some good solutions. So thank you to Mr. Conway for putting this on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Leahy. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, to vote. Thank you. Next, motion by Mr. Conway to ask the superintendent and the athletic director to develop and implement a comprehensive strategy to promote our athletic programs. Second by Mr. Leary. Mr. Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think as we've touched on it tonight, athletics is certainly a strong part of our students' education. And I think that if we take a look at the high school, we see that there are a lot of athletes that certainly make the school very proud, and there are a lot of coaches, I think, doing an excellent job. But what I would like to see, and I listen to a lot of individuals about this, and many people say, I didn't know that the team had this kind of record. I didn't know that so-and-so received an award. And I think that what we need to do is take a look at this, and that's why I put this motion on here, that maybe we could have this go through the subcommittee on athletics, because if you take a look at the, just a few quick ideas, we certainly could promote the program by going on that, having the athletic director go on radio and TV and let them know what's going on a regular basis. We certainly, and we do obviously put information in the newspaper, but I think also we could have, like, and I think we had it before with the last couple athletic directors. They had a newsletter that went out, and this informed everyone in the community what was happening and what events were coming up, what the results were. So we had an idea of what was going on. And again, I know it's a very complicated job, but I think we have to inform the public. We have to inform our own teachers, our own staff, and our own students what's happening. And this is going to help to encourage participation, whether we have increased attendance or we have increased participants. I think also if even getting into the curriculum, we certainly could take, for example, some of our students that are working in the English classes in creative writing, perhaps they could do interviews with our students that received awards, or interviews with coaches. So I think there could be a number of different things that we could do, and I would like to see that, us working on that perhaps through the subcommittee on athletics. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Conway. Mr. Leary.
Yeah, this is an excellent motion. I can remember the newsletter was an email that used to go out talking about the events of the week. And I remember that when I was here, it probably came before that, but I remember like athletic director Brian Martin, for one, used to do this and put out, the team won an event this week, here's who they played, here's who scored the big goal, here's who had an excellent performance. It was really it was an interesting read. It wasn't like a 10-page dissertation, but it was a nice, here's what we happened this week. Actually, it was an email format, and it came out almost every day. So, and I remember when Mr. Martin put that out, I don't remember where it stopped, but it is something that gives everybody an update, and you kind of felt connected to something, even if you were traveling, because I travel a lot. You got it right online, you could read, you know what was going on. So, I like the other points that Mr. Conway put out. It's not a lot of effort, but it's smart effort, and I think that's a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leary. Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, it's a vote. Thank you. Next motion by Mr. Conway, request from the superintendent a spotlight on excellence to highlight the various initiatives across the system that are in place to address bullying, harassment, and violence. As well, please contact District Attorney Gerald Leone and request that he does an informational session on this matter for our middle school students. Second by Ms. Larraba. Mr. Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It obviously has come to the forefront that we have a problem, and not just in the city of Lowell, but throughout the entire country. This idea of it's almost like it's something that kids think it's funny. They think it's something that they should do, a rite of passage. And I think that we certainly have to reinforce the fact that it's wrong, and it's also against the law. And I think that's something that we have to bring forward. Now, discussing this situation with the superintendent very briefly, there are a lot of things that are going on, and I think at this particular point we need to let the public know what is actually happening in these areas here. What are we doing to try to prevent this particular problem? And that's why when we talked about the possibility of spotlight on excellence, that we could take the individuals that do participate in this, individuals that have initiatives, and we could listen to them, see what is actually happening, and perhaps we could improve on that and change some things around. I was fortunate enough to go to I believe it's called the City Managers Gang Advisory Board. Ms. Doherty was there, actually, and I know the superintendent with a host of other individuals, and they discussed this situation. And I know that Senator Pangiotakis, when I contacted him in regards to it, he then contacted Jerry Leone's office, and Jerry Leone was very, very helpful in this area and said that he was willing to come up here, his office was willing to come up here and talk to the middle school students and see if we can kind of change this around and let them know that, again, this is against the law, and he wanted to inform the parents too. Let them know what's happening. And I think he really appreciated the fact that we are being proactive in this area. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. Mr. Leahy, then Ms. Larrabee.
Thank you. This kind of ties into the motion we had about cell phone use, as far as the picture taking and the videos and everything that's been happening in the news lately. Last month, we talked about there's going to be a forum at the Sullivan School, I believe. But we could even take this one step further. When I was reading the quarterly reports and stuff, maybe we should have something go home with the report cards and really give so much information to the parents twice or 4 times a year. Just one sheet that keeps enforcing, the bullying and the cell phone use and responsibility, because it does start at home, but unfortunately, it's being pushed onto the school system, and, we have to take this problem on ourselves with the family. So let's give them enough information that they can use, and hopefully, if we keep driving it home, it's going to get there. So I think, when we talk about this again, maybe that could be a suggestion too, sending a sheet home every time a report card goes home. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Larrabee, then Ms. Doherty.
I would just like to make sure we include something in this about cyberbullying, certainly with Facebook and MySpace. That's a big component. I know that approximately 3 years ago, the Sullivan School had somebody from, I believe it was the DA's office, that did a wonderful presentation about cyberbullying. And so I think we need to just make sure people understand that it's not just kids fighting, it's a whole package deal, that it's all, all types of things that are happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Doherty?
I'd just like to jump on what Mr. Leahy said. From the conversation we had at the City Managers Gang Advisory meeting that Mr. Conway talked about, my sense was we were going to plan a community meeting similar to the forum they had on opioid use, on prescription drug use, which we had an excellent turnout from the community at that event. Parents, students, members from the community, some really good panels of speakers. So I think the cyberbullying piece would fit in, as well as these other things with the video and all that stuff. But I think one thing, if we had a date that I love the idea of sending something home with report cards that kind of, once again tries to educate parents, but also if it had a date, mark this on your calendar, and I don't know, I would defer to the superintendent if they have been talking specific dates yet about this community meeting, but that would be a great early on plug for parents to give that kind of notice as soon as possible. I think it would be a great piggyback of what we're trying to do and also get people out for this event, which I think would be key. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Larrabee, then Madam Superintendent.
I think it also would be a good idea to reach out to the citywide sports, depending on the time of year that this is being planned, whether it's shed baseball or, Lowell youth soccer, just to at least give them the notification that this is what's coming up, because one of the reasons you had such a big turnout at the opiate one was the athletic department coaches told their students, you need to be there. But certainly to extend that to youth recreation throughout the city would be also, I think, a good idea.
Thank you. Madam Superintendent.
I would like to take just a moment just to go over a few initiatives that we're presently looking at and that's taken place in our district to address bullying, schoolyard violence, and unfortunately, the whole incident around postings of violence on YouTube. And I bring that up because it's important for families to know that we've been actively involved in working with those families, with the police department, and with Jerry Leone's office to address that violence, the implication that type of violence has in not only our city, but in our schools. And so there was actually Jerry Leone's office, as well as Assistant Superintendent Murphy's office, worked together last year and had a cyberbullying workshop that was held, I believe, at the Sullivan School, and another one was planned for this year, as we had mentioned, not only to address cyberbullying, but sex texting, and also school violence. We did meet this week, as discussed, with members of the Lowell Police Department, as well as Jerry Leone, to discuss this matter at the Gang Task Force. And it really will take all of our agencies working together to address this very concerning pattern that we don't only see in Lowell, but we see across the country. To have violence glorified in this way, to have youth photograph and videotape such violence, and then to post it and spew it into our culture and climate of our schools and of our city is obviously of great concern. I do appreciate, again, how diligently our staff have worked with all members involved. It's a complex situation. The children involved are victim and victimizer all at the same time. And so there are many issues, social, psychological, and academic, that we're trying to address, even though these issues that have been in the news in the past week did not happen on school property. As you can appreciate, we do share the burden of responsibility as these children do attend our schools, at least some of them. So we will continue to update the committee as public announcements. We are waiting to hear back from both the Lowell Police Department and Jerry Leone's office on a time, but I must say that everybody involved is very eager to work with us and definitely see the importance in doing so.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Any further discussion on Mr. Conway's motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, it's a vote. Thank you. Next motion by Ms. Larrabee, request the superintendent place the budget hearing schedule back on the agenda. Second by Mr. Leahy. Ms. Larrabee.
Thank you. I realize that we did just recently discuss this, and frankly, on the way home from the meeting, it occurred to me that we had kind of defeated the purpose of the request in the first place. My recollection about setting up dates was so that we could get the word out to the public and have the discussions on the public TV so that residents and parents would know what we're discussing, what we're facing. My understanding is that this was going to be informational only, that we weren't going to be making decisions. And this was highlighted with the next day when we were trying to schedule a subcommittee meeting, that to try to get all of us in the same room is a very difficult thing to do. I think everyone understands that everyone has commitments and obligations beyond the school committee. So what I would like to do is really just move forward with the dates that the superintendent has presented us with the understanding that not everyone can make all the meetings. If you cannot make the meetings, I'm sure any one of us who are there would be willing to ask the questions, and I would ask that we do some kind of note-taking so that the people who are not able to make the meeting can get some kind of idea of what occurred. But I think it's important for us to get information out to the public so they can see what's happening, how we're discussing it. And again, I think that since it's not a subcommittee meeting, it's not a decision-making meeting, that we should just really get the dates set in stone so that we can let people know what the topic's going to be and you know, when this is going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leary?
And I appreciate the maker of the motion's motion. I think, you know, as the idea generated, it came from myself and Mr. Conway in terms of taking it out of the realm of just the school committee and bringing in the public. And I guess the part that, when we discussed it last meeting, the part that I was concerned about is that as an entire committee, when we're talking about budget issues with the community, we should all be in attendance if possible. So I think that was the biggest emphasis last meeting, that some of these dates, we knew, like the February 24th date, there were several members that weren't able to attend. And in fairness to those members, we always work with each other's schedules. Now, I don't have a problem having these meetings, but I do have a problem setting each date in stone when we don't even know if the public, certain individuals who want to come, are available to attend on certain topics. I don't have a problem listing out what the topics would be and giving a couple weeks' notice in advance. But I see a problem when we start saying to committee members, you're not, you know, if you got a previous scheduled engagement every month, we're still going to have a meeting without you, informational or not, because they're more than just informational. I think feedback from the committee is important. There's different ways to compromise with that. I mean, you can look at doing, you know, the first and third meeting at 6 o'clock early to discuss these budget issues, if that's one alternative to a compromise. But I do have objection when we're not working together as a unit to ensure each person's schedule, where possible, is working. Perfect examples in history with the school committee when Mr. Kevin McHugh, a previous member, an alumni member of the school committee, had to change his dates because of work from the second and fourth week. The committee worked together to make the meetings the first and third. So it's kind of like we can disagree on issues and disagree on our votes, but when we're working together with the public, especially an issue that will be, you know, televised in LTC, we should be together on it and work as much as possible together to work with it. So I'm looking as much as for a compromise to ensure that the goal that myself and Mr. Conway had envisioned back in October and November of last year is in place, but at the same point having, you know, the entire membership involved. And I think that's imperative, because we're 7 of us, we're all the ones responsible for the final votes. We all would like to hear firsthand from people and their concerns. We all want to have our opinion put out there. So that's my biggest concern. I'd have a problem with voting for the motion as is at this point. I wouldn't have a problem for making compromises and looking for alternatives that would work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leary. Mr. Conway?
Yeah, just very briefly, I mean, I think I understand Ms. Larraba, what she's talking about here is that we do have to have something etched in stone so the public understands what is actually happening. And I think, obviously, Mr. Leary has a good point that we have to work together. So I'm wondering whether we can, you know, sometimes when we're trying to find out certain days for subcommittee meetings, the superintendent secretary will send out a whole host of dates and says who can make these so that we can come up with it. But I think that we do need to come up with dates in advance, and that hopefully we can all be there, because obviously it is extremely important. And again, there are obligations, and occasionally I suppose somebody isn't going to be able to make a meeting. Just like we have, you know, you and the city council have meetings, you know, every Tuesday. That's it. And occasionally one of your members won't be able to make it, and the same with, for example, in the school committee. So I think it's important that we, as Mr. Leary said, perhaps some type of a compromise here if we could work out some type of compromise so that we can be all on the same page with it. But I do realize that, and I appreciate the fact that we do have to plan ahead.
Right.
Thank
Now,
you.
We do have in our packet from the superintendent a list of tentative budget hearing dates. That being said, I'll again recognize the maker of the motion, Ms. Larrabee, and then Ms. Martin and Mr. Leary. Ms. Larrabee.
Thank you. Certainly not my intent to exclude anybody. I just really feel strongly that we should leave here with some kind of schedule in place. And if we want to meet before the meetings that we already have scheduled for school committee meetings, and that's agreeable with everyone, I'm perfectly fine with that, whether we think an hour is enough time to have this kind of discussion or 2 hours. I just, again, really think that we shouldn't piecemeal it. We shouldn't sit there and have a discussion about this one and then 2 weeks later have another discussion about the next one. I'd like to, even if we don't want to go all the way into June, just say, for February, March, and April, which are usually the bigger times from what I've seen, so that we can go through, at least have 6 set up. And I have no problem with saying that, we can come before the meeting if that's workable for everybody else.
Thank you. Ms. Martin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I would actually agree with that as a solution. I think that, even just looking at what was in place before, when we were talking about going the 2nd and the 4th, 50% of those meetings I wouldn't be able to attend. I can
Neither would
apologize
I.
to my call. Yeah, exactly, because I'm at a meeting with you, and, that's what we're going to be. But again, we all schedule our lives to accommodate the school committee in the best ways that we can, recognizing the commitment that it is. But I think that if we can just say 6 p.m. for the next 2-3 months, we can pick a topic as we go through on a week-by-week basis of what will be discussed in terms of the budget at those times. But I think that that's kind of going to be the only kind of across-the-board thing we can do without disregarding other people's schedules, which I'd really like to avoid doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leary.
And I think, a good kickoff would be February 10th. I think we already have it set in stone, and I think as we get into the budget dates, as we get into April, May, we're going to need more than just 6 o'clock. And we can always roll into a regular school committee, because 6:30, 7:30, depending on the topic and who's interested in what thing. But I think if you could amend that motion to reflect that, I would definitely support that.
Would the maker of the motion be willing to amend the motion as suggested by Mr. Leary? Yes. Motion's been amended. Second by Ms. Doherty. Any further discussion on the motion as amended?
I want to make clear the amendment that the February 10th is okay.
Is all set.
Okay.
And then we'll work through a calendar going forward. Ms. Doherty?
I also was someone who wouldn't be able to make 50% of this schedule, and I think we all have concerns because we want to do our due diligence and be here, although I could understand my colleague's point that not to hold up the process, because we do want to keep these meetings available for public input. So I just want to make sure what we're saying then is we're going to hold the February 10th as the first budget hearing, and then after that, we're going to look at starting, having the meetings at 6 o'clock before our
First and
regular
third.
scheduled meeting, and adding on as we need it. Is that what everybody understands? Okay. Because that sounds like a good plan to me.
Ms. Martin on the amended motion?
My only point of distinction would be is I don't believe we're actually holding budget hearings. They would be meetings of the finance subcommittee,
All right, I put it on.
because the budget hearings cannot begin until we actually have a budget.
Thank you.
That's my understanding of it.
Thank you for the clarification. Any further discussion on the motion as amended?
Why don't we do a roll call to make sure?
Okay, I will do a roll call. Roll call, please.
Motion as amended, okay.
Motion is amended.
Ms. Larrabee,
Yes.
Mr. Leahy,
Yes.
Mr. Leary,
Yes.
Ms. Martin,
Yes.
Mayor Milanazzo,
Yes.
Mr. Conway.
Yes.
Ms. Doherty.
Yes.
Motion as amended, approved.
Thank you. Next motion by Ms. Larrabee, request that the members of the school committee attend the charting course, a presentation by Mask Academy for School Leadership, second by Mr. Conway. Ms. Larraba.
Thank you, Your Honor. One of the nice things about being the new kid on the block is that you get all kinds of wonderful information. And one of the brochures that I received was about this program, Charting the Course. And it is a program set for new and veteran school committee members, including topics including school finance, open meeting law, public records law, conflict of interest law, special education law, collective bargaining, school leadership standards and evaluations, and school committee roles and responsibilities. My understanding is that anybody that's been elected after March 24th, 2003 is obligated to take one of these classes. I think, given all the changes in laws, that it would be a good idea if veteran school committee members could make it as well. They're not obligated, of course, but I think what better way to show our staff and administration that we support professional development than by partaking in it of ourselves. They do have several dates. The program is the same on all the different dates. They have a program this weekend in Marlborough, and then they also have one in Haverhill in March and Hyannis in May, and then a couple of others in June, May and June, that haven't been determined yet. But as I said, it's food for thought. It sounds like it's a program that they've done for many years and could be very informative. So, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, signify your approval by saying aye. Opposed? It's a vote. Thank you. Next, motion by Mr. Leary. It's my understanding.
Yeah, I just, for our conversation, I'm currently retooling my language and my benefits here. I just want to withdraw the motion at this point in time. Thank you.
Motion to withdraw by Mr. Leary, seconded by Mr. Leahy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? It's a vote. Thank you. Next motion by Mr. Leary, request the superintendent provide recommendations to the Lowell School Committee regarding incorporating a Horace Mann charter school within the district, which would be separate from the Lowell Community Charter School discussions. Second by Ms. Doherty. Mr. Leary.
Thank you, and I just want to say welcome to my committee members for giving them, killing one motion, because I know it's a long night, and I didn't want to, waste your time tonight, so. Let me get into my other motion regarding the Horace Mann School. I know there's significant conversations going on, not only amongst ourselves, in open meetings that we've discussed regarding the Lowell Community Charter School, and I'm cognizant of multiple discussions going on with the Lowell Community Charter School and the Commissioner of Education, which I guess, Madam Superintendent, do we have a date scheduled for when we'll be meeting with Mitchell Chester again? Yeah. I know he had to cancel this evening's meeting.
That's right, and we haven't been told what the next date will be. We're waiting.
Okay, thank you. This motion really is to take a look at what a Horace Mann's charter school is. Would it benefit the Lowell Public Schools to actually involve ourselves with one, which would not be in relation to the Lowell Community Charter School, and get some recommendations from the administration in terms of, is this something that the Lowell community would accept? Would it be something that would be of benefit? And what are the pros and cons, I guess, really? Looking for some recommendations. What time frames it would be set up if it was a positive thing, and how a Horace Mann actually runs versus a regular Commonwealth charter school. Thank you. You also I might want to just send it to the curriculum subcommittee for a better dialogue too, and when we get those recommendations, so we can touch base on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Superintendent.
I have started to do our homework on the Horace Mann Charter School, not being totally familiar with the charter school movement. And I do have a tutorial set up with a charter school expert. As you can appreciate, people reading in the news that are among the charter school movement have a big investment in coming to Lowell to talk to us. So people are coming and will basically answer many of these questions. When the commissioner did call me with regards to our meeting that was scheduled for this evening that has since got canceled, and we're waiting for the rescheduled date, I did bring up this issue with him, and again, preparation for tonight's meeting, and it was his understanding that there was a February deadline for a Horace Mann application. And given the situation that we're in, I'm not saying that that's necessarily something that we couldn't revisit with him, given the situation that, is very highly unusual. So anyway, so we continue to do our homework, not only on the Horace Mann charter school option, but also just with regards to innovation schools, which is a new concept in the state as well. So I did include in your packet just some of the basic parameters that the legislation stipulates that an innovation school will look like, and the criteria associated with that. With that said, I also did bring up to the commissioner, which, again, I thought we were going to have this full discussion this evening on this point, but if you recall, back in December, on December 23rd, when we met with the commissioner, I asked him if he had thought, given the new legislation that the department was presently looking at passing with regards to turnaround schools and underperforming schools, the designations as we have talked about level 4, level 5, and at a level 4, the school district still has an opportunity to quote-unquote turn around the school, and at level 5, the commissioner would take the school over, and the Department of Education would be responsible. And I suggested to the commissioner, perhaps at that time, that this could be his first level 5 school. This came up again in the conversation when, following our meeting last time, just asking him what he thought various options would be. And this is before, again, to be clear, that the paper reports today that the charter school application may still be extended 1 to 2 years, depending on the steps taken by the charter school, if the commissioner is quoted correctly in the paper. With that said, the commissioner did bring up a level 4 option for that school, if that may be something we'd want to entertain further. And so anyway, so those are the options. The point is we're exploring all of them, and 2 of the 3 options presently are new options that people haven't explored before. Innovation schools, level 4 schools. So this is the homework being done.
Thank you. Ms. Martin?
Thank you very much. If I could ask, as we do move forward, because this may be something of interest to us, as my colleague had said, irregardless of the charter school discussions, would it be possible at this curriculum subcommittee, as we get this information, if we might be able to have some of the kind of external experts attend with us? I know that there was some, in the packet, we had received some interest from the university that they may have Dr. Pearson. I know he's worked very well with this committee in the past. And that might be a way to help the subcommittee and therefore the full committee make well-informed choices. So if that could be possible, that would be great.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Madam Superintendent?
Just point of clarification, when the packet went out on Friday, I'm still thinking we're having the meeting tonight at 6, so we weren't informed till 8:35 on Monday morning. So I do appreciate the suggestion, because we have been doing our homework for tonight's meeting, so that would be a good venue. And again, I'll let the committee know as soon as the commissioner gets back to me.
Thank you. We do need a motion to amend the current motion on the floor to refer to the curriculum subcommittee. So moved by Mr. Leary, seconded by Ms. Doherty. On the amended motion, any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, to vote. Thank you. Last motion of the evening by Ms. Doherty. Request the superintendent prepare a report for the Lowell High School Subcommittee on the number of students taking AP classes and passing the AP exam over the last 5 years, including which ones are Latin Lyceum students, which ones are not, and how many from each group opt out of taking the test. Seconded by Mr. Conway. Ms. Doherty.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think the motion pretty much speaks for itself. In way of explanation, I would say we're looking for data to measure the most challenging courses we offer at the high school. And AP courses in particular lend themselves to this because there's a national standard. Students who complete the AP course have to take, they're supposed to take a standard test, a national test, in order to receive AP credit when they go to college. So I'm really looking to kind of look at the trends over the last 5 years. How have our students been doing? And separate them out into these groups, the Latin Lyceum students and the students who are not in the Lyceum who take the AP courses. And that's the intent, just to get more data for information. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Conway, on the motion.
Mr. Mayor, I have some concerns with this motion here, because if you take a look at it, we're talking about, and I understand, I understand what Ms. Doherty is talking about, the fact of getting as much information as possible so that we can move forward. However, if we take a look at this, we find that there's approximately 150 to 170 students in AP classes, which basically accounts for around 12 classes each year.
Mr. Conway, you have the floor.
X2 goes back, I believe, 2 years, perhaps 3 years. So now you would have to go back into those historic archives, which in reality, we're going to have to, meaning the guidance counselors, those 2 guidance counselors, by the way, that are taking care of college information, I would assume that this report would fall on their shoulders, because they have been moved back into those positions. And those individuals would have to go back, as far as I can see, that's my understanding, they would have to take a look at each and every child's transcript to be able to translate this. And that would be the amount of hours it would take in order to do this. This is where my concern is, because those guidance counselors right now, those college guidance counselors, are working on, as Ms. Martin's second motion when we were talking about scholarships, you know, they're concentrating on their scholarships, they're concentrating on getting the appropriate qualifications. Everything is ready for colleges and college fairs and so forth. So there's a lot of information that is being pumped out right now for our students that are there. And I mean, I understand the information. We need some information. I'm wondering whether it would make more sense if, just for time's sake, if we had the headmaster and the director of curriculum come to a subcommittee meeting of Lowell High School and give a report, a verbal report, to see if that's enough of information going forward. Because once again, the time commitment away from the students at this point to come up with a report, and what are we going to do with it? That's my concern. And I would like to make an amendment to that motion, if the author of the motion would go along with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Larraba?
I guess I'm confused that they would have to go through transcripts manually. We're not on computer more than 3 years back? Is that what, did I understand that correctly? Who do I ask that question of? I'm sorry.
I would say this, Madam Superintendent.
All the details the school committee member Conway just went through with regards to what would be involved in this report, I would have to follow up with Mr. Samaras to confirm exactly the steps required.
Okay.
So I'd have to take it under advisement.
Okay. I guess my concern is I understand what Mr. Conway is saying. If it turns out to be something that 5 years back is hard to do, that maybe it's information going 3 years back, but I would not be comfortable with just getting a verbal, this is the way the program goes. I would feel more comfortable if we do have some actual data saying, this is how many kids have taken it, this is how many kids have passed it, and something like that. But certainly, if you could find out what the process is, and if that part is cumbersome, then clearly we could, if Committee Member Doherty is so inclined, make it a 3-year process.
Madam Superintendent, then Ms. Martin.
To be clear, all of our students are next to and have been for many years. I don't know, that's all I'm saying, what's involved in this report. And with just all due respect, I want to look into it and report out.
Thank you. Ms. Martin, then back to Mr. Conway.
And actually, I would pose my question, because I do think Mr. Conway might know this better than any of us. Does the school collect AP test information? It comes back to the school, it doesn't go back to the student?
I believe it does. And the reason why, when I took a look at this motion, it, again, being in the system so many years, I said, oh my word, what is this going to entail? Here's a motion to gather data. Is the information available? Can you, which I've often said in meetings, can you push a button to get this information? And I went down to the high school for informational purposes only, and I sat down with the headmaster and the director of curriculum, and this is the information that they gave me, that this would take a tremendous amount of hours in order to get this report out. And their suggestion to me was, I'd love to sit down, we would love to sit down, and perhaps we could clarify to the maker of the motion and be able to satisfy the information that she might need without tying up the guidance counselors to go back and to look at the transcripts. Again, I'm taking their word for it that this is what has to take place. Thank you.
Ms. Doherty, then Ms. Larrabee.
Thank you, Your Honor. It's not my intention to make people work excessively. On the other hand, we base our decisions on good data, not anecdotal stories, but data. We have now, going through the K-8 system, what the superintendent refers to as data summits. We have elementary schools and middle schools coming down to central office and spending a portion of their day looking at data, specific information about our students. Now, I understand my colleague to the right. He also had major concerns several months ago when I asked for a report from the superintendent regarding their early release days at the high school and how they're using that time for professional development to further our goals of improving the quality of instruction. And we heard at that time that it was going to be an excessive amount of time to do the work. Now, I cannot tell you off the top of my head how many students are in our AP classes. What I can tell you is that any student who takes an AP course at Lowell High, if they're going to get college credit, they have to take that standardized test, and that information is supplied from the high school to their colleges that they apply to. So somebody's got that data down there. And kind of foreseeing that there would be a little pushback on providing us with the data we need to look at the programs, to evaluate the success or weaknesses of these programs, I made a call to our data guy, or actually it was an email, saying, does this seem like an extreme amount of information to pull together? And the response I got was, no, we should have that information fairly accessible. So I don't know if Mr. Conway heard a different response from the headmaster, but I'm saying quite strongly to my committee, we need the information in order to make informed decisions. We need to look at the success, how do we measure the success of our most challenging courses at the high school. And one way is to look at this small group of students who are taking AP courses and evaluate, are they actually passing the test when they take the test? And are they Lyceum students or non-Lyceum students? Now, my colleague to my left suggests that maybe we just go back 3 years. I'm okay with amending it to 3 years it doesn't give us that 5-year trend I was looking for, and I would also be open to getting feedback back from the superintendent if 5 years is just as feasible as 3 years. But I absolutely don't want a verbal report. I want to see numbers. I want the facts, the data. I think that we need that to be informed in our decisions going forward. Thank you.
Ms. Larrabee, then Mr. Conway.
Thank you.
Madam
I just want to clarify one thing. I'm not looking to make extra work for people, but at the same time, I don't want to base my decisions and say we only want information that we can get at the push of a button. With all due respect, Mr. Conway, if it's something that they need to do the research because it's important information or it's information that we can make better decisions with, then yes, they'll have to do the research. But if it's something that we can get with a smaller amount, that's fine too. But I get a little concerned there when you said look for information that we just get with the push of a button, because sometimes sometimes you have to go dig in the records and get that information that way. Thank you.
Mr. Conway, then Madam Superintendent.
Again, I think that in many ways we're all agreeing with each other. I think that we need to get as much information as possible, and I'm not disagreeing with that. What I am concerned with is when I sat down with both those individuals that work on this on a daily basis, and they're telling me that this is going to tie up those 2 college guidance counselors that are now working on scholarship for our seniors and working on a number of other things dealing with our seniors, bringing them forward. And their suggestion was maybe we could go, and I'm just thinking we can obviously put together a subcommittee meeting in a week or so, that they could come and clarify exactly what we're talking about. I mean, maybe I misunderstood them, but I certainly don't think I did. That they were trying to bring that point across, that there were going to be many hours that were going to be taken away in order to come up with this report. And again, I don't see what the problem is to hesitate for a week and bring them forward, and perhaps what the information that they give us will be enough. Maybe they'll bring some data with them. Maybe, as we talked about the 3 years, maybe they can get that information in a pretty readily available. But at least they can come in and explain to us the process to see if it makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Superintendent?
I'd just like to comment again that I would like the opportunity to take this motion forward and do some work on it, we have, myself, my cabinet, and the administration have a big investment in us taking action on your motions and getting the answers that you're looking for. So I will follow up on that. And School Committee Member Doherty, you also did mention with regards to the request on professional development offerings at the high school. And in keeping with all of the professional development that we were offering at K-8. Actually, Deputy Franco and I spoke today with regards to, again, bringing together all that information, K-12, in one location so we can see the offerings, just, again, making it a K-12 system, not a K-8 and then a high school piece. So we are actively working on getting that information. We will present it to the committee.
Mr. Leary?
I wasn't going to weigh in on this, but some statements were made. I guess the question is, how much data is already on X2? Does anybody know? I thought I heard 2 years, 3 years. And what is actually on X2 right now?
My understanding is, and again, this is the point of clarification, because I just haven't had the conversation with guidance counselors or the headmaster on this point. All of our student data is on X2. What I don't know if individual grades are by test. So a grade for the whole class might be there, but how does it break down? So I just need to follow up on the details, because there are a few details in this, and I don't know if any of my cabinet knows that level of detail.
Just,
to jump in?
No,
Okay, thank you.
unless the committee wants to suspend the rules.
I was just going to give you
Okay.
information about how AP scores are reported, because they're not reported to the high school.
Suspension of the rules, Your Honor.
Suspension by Mr. Leary, second by Ms. Larraba.
I apologize.
That's okay.
I'm Edie LeBran. I'm the principal of the Sullivan Middle School, but in a previous life, I was student services director at a high school. And I know that when the students take the AP exam in May, the class, by the time the grades come back, like in late July, the students are already graded in the class. It does not reflect on the final grade in the course. The AP board is the one who then reports the score of the 3, 4, 5 to the college the student is applying to. So I think if you were looking they report it also to the high school. The high school gets a summary report. So if you have AP biology, you'll get a report of all the students who took the test and then what their scores were, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. But the students have their grades have closed for the year. They've already received the grade. So their grade on X2 would not reflect the score in the AP exam.
That's what I was
So
concerned
I
about.
just wanted to clarify that point, and I'm sorry, and I apologize for jumping up
Thank
and
you.
interrupting. Thank you for letting me do that.
Thank you. Going back to the agenda, Ms. Martin.
If I could, just so we can perhaps move this forward, I do think that we do need to get some additional information, so my recommendation would be, if the committee is comfortable with it, passing the motion as it stands, and basically it will be the superintendent's responsibility to check in with the leadership at both the high school and from the X2 technology side of things, and come back to us and let us know what is feasible. It's certainly within the purview of of the administration to say, we can give you these 2 years, but we can't give you these 3, or whatever iteration is most effective. Because I do think, with the scores come back, I don't know if those scores are put into X2.
That's my question.
It's a separate grading system that doesn't interact with what we have. So I just don't, like we're saying, we just don't know. And I think it would be, if we could pass this motion now, and then the superintendent can come back to us with what's the most effective information.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. As a courtesy from the chair, Mr. Conway, would you like a roll call, and/or would you like to withdraw your second and substitute it with another second? Entirely up to you. No, substitute. No, I mean someone from the chair.
One more time, Mr. Mayor, on that one.
As a courtesy, would you like a roll call on the motion, and would you like to withdraw your second, and I will look to another
I
committee
believe
person?
I'll withdraw my second.
Okay. Second by Ms. Larraba. All those in favor of the motion as presented signify by saying aye. Opposed, it's a vote. Thank you. Moving on with the agenda, subcommittees. We have two subcommittee sets of minutes. The Joint Special Education and Finance report and approval of the minutes of January 28th, 2010. Any discussion on the minutes as presented? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion by Ms. Larrabee, seconded by Mr. Conway. All those in favor of the minutes as presented signify by saying aye. Opposed, to vote. Next, Finance report and approval of the minutes of the January 28th, 2010 minutes. Again, you have those in your packet. Any discussion? Entertain a motion by Mr. Leary, seconded by Ms. Martin. All those in favor of the minutes as presented signify by saying aye. Opposed, it's a vote. Thank you. Moving on, reports of the superintendent, quarterly report on motions. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Your Honor. I bring forward the quarterly report on the outstanding motions. And when I asked for this to be put into your, onto the agenda for this evening, I asked the deputy and the assistant superintendents to go through the various motions here and to highlight what they thought was complete. At this time, what would be helpful from my perspective is for the various makers of the motion to give me some feedback if in fact you think to your understanding it is complete. To the extent that it's not, at the wish of the committee, we can have a discussion about it tonight, or to the extent that it's not, we can take it to the appropriate subcommittee meeting. That would be helpful, thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Doherty, then Ms. Martin. Ms. Doherty.
Thank you. Through you to the superintendent, I was referring to motion number 7, which is a motion I had regarding parent meetings.
Right.
And I agree that it was complete in terms of you did provide us with a report.
Right.
I would request that we keep it open, that we have updates on the scheduling of parent meetings, because it really is my intention to try to better coordinate how we use the very few minutes that we have with for parent-teacher conferences. And I'll give you an example off the top of my head. I know that when the high school did their open house in the fall,
Right.
there was a scheduling conflict because we had one of our major middle schools, the Daily Middle School, their parent-teacher night was the same night. And so that was a conflict for many parents in terms of if they had children in both schools. Another issue in regard to trying to coordinate these parent meetings better is if you, with your leadership meetings with your principals, not only just scheduling them so they're staggered and not on the same evenings, but also looking at somewhat around the report card schedule or progress reports, maybe designating a period of a few weeks that are, you know, these are parent-teacher meetings in Lowell, or something that coordinates it better with our parents. And I know one of our meetings is an afternoon meeting, one is an evening meeting. You know, this idea of really piggybacking those two for folks who can't make it out in the evening. Just to, I mean, that was my intention from the beginning with this motion, to have the school administrators be looking, you know, more holistically about the parent meetings. So my request would be to keep it open and provide us with updates as that makes sense to you. And I think that my colleague, Mr. Leahy, also had a concern about parent meetings that you mentioned the other day.
Madam Superintendent? And then Ms. Martin, excuse me.
So we've already collected all this information for this year just because we too had an investment in making sure that we knew when these meetings were scheduled. I like your idea with regards to having a block of time on our school calendar. And so maybe when we bring forward the school calendar this year, we can note that time for the next year, so everybody's on the same page. With regards to you know, to the extent that logistically it's possible, it's really tough to coordinate so that during that window, we're not going to have some one-night crossover with the high school. So we'll look at it as a whole and be considerate to those concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Martin?
Thank you. I was just going to say, you know, moving forward, as I review my my motions that are in the highlighted portion as completed, I'm comfortable with them being removed from the list. So those can be removed. I'd also say that there are a number on on here from Ms. Fatacanti, all of which are kind of time-sensitive, have already been completed, and I'd recommend being removed from the list so we can streamline our ongoing list.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Leahy,
Is that a motion to remove?
do we need that?
Do we
in
need a
form of
motion?
No, I don't think.
I don't think we do. It's just a working
It's a working
document, so.
document.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Leahy?
Thank you. I just, I guess speaking first on what Ms. Doherty said on hers motion, I'm just getting a little confused because this goes back to '08, but I thought that we had set up that we're gonna have 2 parent-teacher meetings every year, one at night and one in the afternoon. Then I guess it kind of fell into the category that I thought it was negotiated into the contract or not, I don't know. Then I thought it fell into the category that we were gonna let the principals handle the second meeting. So I guess I need a clear understanding of what's happening, because I thought it was the intent a few years ago that we were gonna have 2 parent-teacher nights. Because 2 years ago, the big talk was, we had meetings, and we were at the Stocklosa School for many a night, and we were trying to get, the big thing was how we're gonna get the community and the parents involved, and part of it was to have another open house.
Right.
So I'm a little confused on where it went.
You did negotiate that additional time into the last contract. And so when I came on the scene, basically I was requested by the committee to do a survey of exactly how these dates when were the dates and when were they being used? And what were they being used for? So were they, in fact, parent-teacher nights, or was it curriculum nights, or was it open house? How was it defined? So that was last year, and this topic has come up and been clarified now with the principals at least 4 different times, and it seems like because it was something that was newly negotiated, exactly the expectation around that time slot, and it's been very clearly stated by this administration that it's to be used for parent-teacher conferences. And, there is, my understanding, in the contract, a provision where one of those times they can have for curriculum night, but the other is to be strictly used for parent-teacher conferences. That's another issue, I think, that we can talk about during negotiations, just because we don't have, we don't necessarily have a lot of time that we presently have in the contract for teachers to meet with parents. But my understanding is that the school committee really fought hard to get this additional time in there, and I'm grateful to have it. So we're just trying to make sure we use it with the intention that it's been negotiated for.
All right, I'm still a little confused, because with my kids, we have an open house night.
Right.
Is that a parent-teacher meeting
No,
or
my
not?
understanding is, and perhaps other committee members know the history better than I, but that existed. But the school committee saw the need to have more time for teachers to
Right.
meet with parents. So you negotiated an additional time slot in the contract. My understanding of this motion, although I initially had the wrong understanding because I didn't realize you didn't have that. So then when I realized what the motion was about, we surveyed all the schools, and we asked specifically, when are you using, what's the date if you're a parent-teacher night, and has it, and what does logistically it look like? Because it does present a logistical challenge for our teachers. To be fair to our teachers, many of them still meet with parents outside of the contracted hour because there just isn't enough time to meet with their parents, and so they do. But I can meet with you, John, anytime that you'd like, even to go over all the dates, and I'll submit the report to the committee, all the dates this year that we've surveyed all of our principals. And but I can go over that with you along with the contract, and we can sit down and go over it so you can see how they match up.
All right, well, I can't really be involved in the contracts because I have a conflict. My sister's a teacher at the Green Elge, so.
I just meant to explain the contract operationally, not that you would
Okay.
vote on it, but
Well, I
just
just, as a parent,
Yeah.
we meet in September, everybody has their open houses.
Right.
But basically, it's an open house. You meet your teacher, you don't
Right.
discuss anything about, you're not supposed to talk about classes or whatever.
Student achievement, I see.
Okay, student achievement. Then, you know, there may or may not be another meeting in the springtime in the afternoon.
Right.
I know at one of the schools that my kids go to, they do have it. And at another school, I can't remember going into it. So, you know, I don't want to belabor this, but
That's an
mean,
important point.
very simply, there's supposed to be 2 meetings a year, one at night and one in the afternoon. And I guess I would ask my colleagues, are we getting that or are we not? And if we're not, why not? So, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Larrabee?
Sorry, I'm going to use the privilege of being the new kid on the block. In looking at these motions, there's one from April 1st of 2009 regarding the physical education. Could you, through you to the superintendent, could you just tell me what the outcome of that was? It was about waiving physical education requirement for high school students who,
What number, please?
number 41, sorry.
The outcome of that was that, in fact, a waiver could be provided.
How do we get that information out to parents?
Ms. Martin?
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
How would we get that
Question
information
on the
out?
floor.
How would we get that information out to parents? Because I was not aware that that was something that could be done, and I certainly have a child that's involved in sports.
Madam Superintendent?
If I could just ask the maker of the motion, it was requested, we did get the information, it was a positive. Do you recall from there, sorry?
If I may, my understanding was that the high school did not feel ready to make a move like that at that time, so we deferred that because they do have a task force looking at the
Right.
scheduling.
Correct.
And they're looking at a rotating basis in terms of, so you don't have children who are leaving early for athletics events
that
or
was it.
always missing their last period. So the decision at that time was to defer actually doing this, providing this waiver for
Right.
student athletes till we could look at it more closely. And so that's why I wonder if we might want to change completed to ongoing with that. We know that we could offer the waiver, but we're not ready yet for what the repercussions would be. And Ms. Franco might want to add something to that.
Just to refresh everybody's memory, we were working on a revolving schedule and whatnot, and then we cut 25 positions shortly after that. So all of the work that was going on in that particular area, trying to figure that out, was halted because of the budget cuts that we had. So in essence, to relook at it, it's a different time, but I know that what came out in a lot of our discussions were that the physical education classes absorb quite a few students, and, you know, that was what happened at that particular time. But because we went through all that budget cutting, it might be a new time to look at it. I just remember that being what happened at the particular time.
I can come back to you, Ms. Martin. No, all set. Ms. Larrabee?
So I guess my question is, can we relook at that? Because I think that's something that a lot of parents and students are interested in, because I certainly hear about it from parents when their children are trying to set up their schedules in high school. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the quarterly report on motions, Mr. Leahy?
Thank you. I guess it looks like most of the ones that are yellow, we usually okay them and they're taken off the list. So I guess what I would say is I would probably recommend that we take them off, and anybody that's not happy with it could bring the motion back. But I would like to just add, and as a suggestion to the superintendent, that I think all over the system, we're feeling the shortfall from last year. And I can clearly see with the amount of motions here, and then just in our packet this week that we're waiting for reports to come in. Usually our packets are done on Friday, and there's 4 or 5 pages in our packet. So I would almost make another motion that you come back to us with a solution. I mean, whether we need another clerk in your office or something, I think we need to get a handle on getting reports back to the committee for our information so that we can make better decisions and be informed. I just think that, crept up on us here. So I think that if you had any suggestions to help you, to help us, it would be much appreciated. Because I know everybody's working 50, 60 hours a week, but it's getting a little frustrating on our end that in some of these reports we ask for, we're not asking for a lot, but we just want the high school to give us a one-sheet memo on what's going on. I have a motion in there about asking for the numbers into the Latin Lyceum, and it's been 4 months, and I'm not looking for a big report. I'm just looking for how many kids applied and how many kids got accepted. So I don't know why the high school can't send that over. And so I would make that as a formal motion that you get back to us with how we can help your office be more efficient.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Leary. On the motion, Mr. Leary?
Well, actually, not on the motion.
Not on the, well, let's take up the motion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed, to vote. On the report, Mr. Leary?
Just, Madam Superintendent, just one that I think is really important is on the first page, number 5, the 5-year goals. I know we have a lot of different things, pathway programs, et cetera. What I think we need to do is really tie that in place to where the entire district really knows what our goals are going forward for the next 5 years. And I think sitting down with your cabinet, you probably have good ideas as to where your direction you're going in. But I think we need to have the school committee have some input as well as, some of the principals, what have you. Let's put this in place so we can put this on our web base saying, here's what the Lowell Public Schools 5-year goals are, so we can really, go forward and address, what our mission statement is at this point. I know we have a mission statement, but what is it? Do we need to really redefine it? Where are we really going to be going in the next 5 years? And obviously, these are, they're flexible, but it gives us a direction, it gives everybody an understanding, it gives the entire organization an understanding of where we're going. And I know it's complex and it's difficult and it takes time to put together, but if we could do this over the next few months as we get into the end of the fiscal year, put something, sit down with your folks, sit down with the personnel subcommittee in terms of your own goals, also put these goals in place so we can kind of get it with that motion. I know the motion, it says deferred for action, and I know it can get bogged down, but I think without really clear-cut direction that everybody's cognizant of, not just you and the school committee, but the entire organization, I think that will only help us ensure success. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leary. Any other discussion on the quarterly report on motions? Ms. Larraba.
Sorry, new kid question again. When it's referred to a subcommittee, whose responsibility is it at that point to make sure that this is taken care of and given back to the committee? Is it the subcommittee itself?
I would defer that question to the superintendent, but I believe it would be the subcommittee.
Right, the work gets done at the subcommittee level and then gets reported out in the subcommittee reports.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Ms. Doherty?
Yes, I have a couple of motions that we could just take off. That would be number 20 regarding last year's budget process. Number 22 and 27 have been completed. They could be removed. And then there was another one. I guess I just lost it. Number 33. That was one that was referred to personnel, and we did report out on that. So just to try to clean up some of those that...
Okay, thank you. Good suggestion. Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, accept the quarterly report on motions as a report of progress. Motion by Ms. Martin, seconded by Ms. Doherty. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? It's a vote. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the personnel report. Madam Superintendent.
As submitted February the 3rd.
Motion to approve the report by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Leary. Any discussion on the report as presented? Hearing none. All those in favor? Oh, Ms. Doherty.
I would just make a motion that we send a letter to our retirees, don't we?
Yes, you do.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor of accepting the report signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, it's a vote. Thank you. Next item, list of eligible teachers. Madam Superintendent.
As submitted, January 28th.
Move approval by Mr. Leary, second by Ms. Martin. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Let's vote. Next item, home education, we took up under suspension. Moving on with the agenda, we have a vote to accept gift donation to provide freshman wrestling coach salary. In your packet, we have a memo from Assistant Superintendent Lang to Superintendent Scott indicating that we have an anonymous gift of $5,007 for the purpose of restoring the freshman wrestling coach position for the 2009-2010 school year, and that the donation be deposited in the Lowell High School Athletic Revolving Fund and payments dispersed from the Lowell High School Athletic Revolving Fund for said purpose.
Motion to accept.
Motion to accept by Ms. Doherty, second by Mr. Leary. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Larrabee.
Yes.
Mr. Leahy.
Yes.
Mr. Leary.
Yes.
Ms. Martin.
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo.
Yes.
Mr. Conway.
Yes.
Ms. Doherty.
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Thank you. Moving on to conventions and conference requests. Take them one at a time. Mr. Leahy.
Motion to,
Yeah, no, I'd like to take them one at a time. I had a few things to
That's
ask.
fine. The first one is Robert Thompson, Sullivan School social worker, to attend a workshop entitled Asperger's Syndrome and High Functioning Autism on February 16, 2010 in Concord, New Hampshire. The cost of $199 will be funded by the school professional development funds. No substitute teacher is needed.
motion to accept.
Motion to accept by Ms. Doherty, second by Ms. Larrabee.
Second.
Any further discussion on this, Mr. Leahy?
On this one here, I just want to note that this is during February vacation, so I just want to, this person should be thanked for taking their own time to go to this conference on vacation week. Thank you.
This is right here. Oh,
Thank you. Do we need a roll call on?
yeah, because it's,
Okay, roll call, please.
Ms. Larrabee.
Yes.
Mr. Leahy.
Yes.
Mr. Leary.
Yes.
Ms. Martin.
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo.
Yes.
Mr. Conway.
Yes.
Ms. Doherty.
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Next request, Laura Lyons, Sullivan School teacher, to attend a workshop entitled Current Best Strategies to Help Speech Language Pathologists Support Student Literacy Skills on March 2nd, 2010 in Manchester, New Hampshire. The cost of $199 will be funded by the Special Education Grant. No substitute teacher is required. Motion to approve by Ms. Martin, second by Ms. Larrabee. Any discussion on the request? Mr. Leahy.
Yeah, sorry. Just trying to get my notes. This one here, I guess I had a question on why there was no substitute. Why no substitute needed? Would anybody know that one?
Usually, I'll speak, and then if Assistant
Madam
Superintendent.
Superintendent?
Sorry. Just to clarify, a lot of the time when our specialists leave and go to a workshop like this, the child's still entitled to the number of hours on their IEP, and then it's calculated, and the children receive that service through compensatory services. It goes on that list. So their IEP protects them so that, in fact, they will receive, this time will be made up to them, that the speech language pathologist in this case misses. That's one issue. The second issue, and the school committee tried to help us address this, just the fact that it's very difficult to get speech language pathologists to work, and you did approve late last spring an assistant position with regards to the speech language pathology. We do have, I believe, 2 assistants now in the system that help with that shortage. But rest assured, the children will receive their services.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Larrabee.
Yes.
Mr. Leahy.
Yes.
Mr. Leary.
Yes.
Ms. Martin.
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo.
Yes.
Mr. Conway.
Yes.
Ms. Doherty.
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
The third request, field trip request, 12 Lowell High School Student Council representatives along with Student Council Advisor Tom Thornton to take part in the 2010 Massachusetts Association of Student Council workshops on March 10th through the 12th. The cost of the conference and transportation is $3,420 and will be funded by the Office of Student Affairs and Activities at Lowell High School. No substitute teacher is needed. Motion by Ms. Martin, seconded by Ms. Larraba. Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Larraba.
Yes.
Mr. Leahy.
Yes.
Mr. Leary.
Yes.
Ms. Martin.
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo.
Yes.
Mr. Conway.
Yes.
Ms. Doherty.
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Thank you. Lowell High School paraprofessional Carolyn Demers has been invited by the American Federation of Teachers to attend the Paraprofessional and School-Related Personnel Conference from April 8th to the 11th in Orlando, Florida. The AFT will fund all costs associated with the conference. The cost of $200 for substitute teacher will be funded by Lowell High School individual school funds. Motion by Mr. Leahy, second by Mr. Conway. Mr. Leahy.
Okay, thank you. This is my question on these next two. I understand we're working collaboratively with the unions, but my question is, on number 4, we have a substitute. On number 5, we don't have a substitute. And and then the cost is being picked up by the school. So I guess my question would be, what I'd like to see is, if these teachers and paraprofessionals are being asked to go to these conferences and the tabs being picked up by the AFT, why aren't they splitting the cost to the school? Because, you know, we're paying another substitute to come into the school. And why at one school do we say, well, you know, we need someone to fill your position for the day, and then another school we say, well, you know, we can do without you for the day, basically. So, you know, I think both positions are important in the school, and I don't know why one wouldn't have a sub and one would. I did call on them, so I did find out the answers, but, you know, and we shouldn't take the money out of our own personal account if they're being taken away to a conference on union business, I guess.
Could I ask a point of clarification? Who did you call?
Well, I called the schools to ask why there was a sub at one and why there wasn't a sub at the other school.
Is that our role, to be calling the school as opposed to going through the superintendent, I guess is my question. I guess, again, not to put you in the spot, I know we
I don't know.
We wouldn't do that on the
figured I'd
council
call,
side,
yeah.
but again, Madam Superintendent, if you'd like to answer the question.
The assumption is, when we see that there's no substitute required, is that operationally, the issue has been staffed at the building site so that the students are receiving everything that they are required to receive on that particular day, given the schedule of that day.
All right, so I guess I'm just going to respectfully disagree that if a para's in a building, I think, you know, I'm sure they have a duty that they're performing. So could you just answer maybe why we wouldn't split the cost of substitutes?
I can look into that.
Or is that something different? Or?
I can look into that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion and seconded. Any further discussion on item number 4? Roll call.
Ms. Larraba.
Yes.
Mr. Leahy.
Yes.
Mr. Leary.
Yes.
Ms. Martin.
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo.
Yes.
Mr. Conway.
Yes.
Ms. Doherty.
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Thank you. Last request for conference, Brenda King, Lincoln School Paraprofessional, to attend the Paraprofessional and School-Related Personnel Conference from April 8th to the 11th in Orlando, Florida. The AFT will fund all costs associated with the conference. No substitute teacher is needed. Motion by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Conway. Any discussion on this request? Roll call.
Ms. Larraba.
Yes.
Mr. Leahy.
Yes.
Mr. Leary.
Yes.
Ms. Martin.
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo.
Yes.
Mr. Conway.
Yes.
Ms. Doherty.
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Thank you. Under communications, we have 2 items of under communications. We have a letter dated January 8th, 2010 from Dr. Joseph McCarthy, Director of New York University School of Medicine, accepting an invitation to address the Lowell High School graduating class of 2010. Any discussion? Accept the communication. Placed on file by Mr. Leahy, second by Ms. Larrabee. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Next item, which is something that Mr. Leahy had actually brought up to the mayor, Lowell Telecommunications Channel 10 broadcast of school committee meetings live on the first and third Wednesday in the month. Thursdays, they replayed at 6 p.m., Saturday and Sundays at 2 p.m., and Tuesday at 10 a.m. So again, for our viewing audience, just to let the viewing audience know that it's replayed 4 times during the course of the week. Accept that communication. Is a communication placed on file by Ms. Larrabee, seconded by Mr. Leahy. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Thank you. Professional personnel, anything under professional personnel?
No, you.
Hearing none. Civil service? Hearing none. Motion by Ms. Larrabee, second by Mr. Conway to adjourn. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye. Thank you.